Lemire, Karine Jean-Pierre, Doug Thornell. Most of all, to you for watching. That does it for our hour. I'm Nicole. MTP Daily with Chuck Todd starts now.
Welcome to Wednesday. Boy, it ends in a Y, but it is an extraordinary one. It's Meet the Press Daily. Good evening. I'm Chuck Todd here in Washington, where we've got a lot of late-breaking, rather mysterious developments tied to an urgent briefing that the State Department watchdog just gave to lawmakers about a matter connected to Ukraine. Moments ago, Congressman Jamie Raskin, Democrat from Maryland, spoke to reporters after being briefed on this behind closed doors. The State Department's Inspector General apparently briefed them on some kind of packet of conspiracy theories that was circulating mysteriously at the State Department, seemingly connected to the former Ukrainian ambassador, which was seemingly connected to the whistleblower complaint. Some apparently involve Trump properties. A lot of people are scratching their heads about all of this. We're going to speak with Congressman Raskin in a moment to get more clarity. But folks, this is just one of a number of developments today here in Washington, where President Trump clearly is under siege and lashing out in dramatic and alarming fashion amid a deluge of developments. Today, Democrats moved to subpoena the White House if it doesn't hand over documents on Ukraine. Key White House officials are lining up for depositions and testimony. There's new reporting suggesting the whistleblower was worried his explosive claims might be swept under the rug by the administration. Mr. Trump's Secretary of State has now admitted he was on the president's call with Ukraine. There's a cascade of damaging and embarrassing leaks about the president's behavior in other aspects of his governing style. Cabinet secretaries, like his acting Homeland Security chief, are publicly now airing grievances. Folks, all of that is the backdrop for the president's performance today, which was at times unhinged, angry, untruthful, deceptive, profanity-laced, and for many, alarming. He wants the top Democrat on the impeachment inquiry, Adam Schiff, investigated for treason, a point he has been making numerous times. At one point, he seemed to make up out of thin air a scandal that Schiff personally helped write the whistleblower complaint. At another, he concocted a story about how the Ukraine call transcript dealt a mortar blow to his critics, when in fact its revelations ignited an impeachment inquiry. Then he refused to answer a reporter's question about what he wanted Ukraine's president to do about Joe Biden. And I haven't even mentioned the profanity-laced tweets, the attacks on the whistleblower, the unfounded claims about spies aiding the whistleblower, and oh, so much more. The president is acting like someone cornered by the fallout from this impeachment inquiry, which is just getting started. We got a lot of news to try to break down. So I'm going to start with our correspondents and my White House colleague, Kristen Welker, NBC's Jeff Bennett. He's covering the action on Capitol Hill. Kristen, let me start with you. As far as the White House is concerned, it seemed to be the president and an airing of grievances every single chance he got if there was a camera around.
That's right, Chuck. And remember, our day started with a tweet storm, and that's just about how every day has started this week, with President Trump lashing out at the inquiry at Democrats on Capitol Hill. And basically, you are seeing this intensifying standoff. To your point, I think what we witnessed during that press conference was a president who feels embattled and backed into a corner. And it was sort of encapsulated in that moment when my colleague Jeff Mason asked him a very simple question. What is it that you wanted
Kristen,
the president of Ukraine to do?
Let me pause that because I think it's so important. Let's not describe it. It's the question at the heart of this impeachment inquiry, and the president of the United States refused to answer it. But let's let it play out for you to watch.
What did you want him to look into on Biden?
Look, Biden and his son are stone cold crooked, and you know it. His son walks out with millions of dollars. The kid knows nothing. You know it, and so do we. Go ahead, ask a question.
But the question, sir, was what did you want President Zelensky to do about Vice President Biden and his son Hunter?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up of what I just asked you, sir.
Listen, you ready? We have the president of Finland. Ask him a question.
I have one for him. I just wanted to follow up on the one that I asked you, which was,
did you hear
what
me?
Did you want
Did you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Ask him a question.
I will, but
I've given you a long answer. Ask this gentleman a question. Don't be rude.
No, sir. I don't want to be rude. I just wanted you to have a chance to answer the question that I asked you.
I've answered everything. It's a whole hoax. And you know who's playing into the hoax? People like you and the fake news media that we have in this country.
Obviously, the big alarming piece of news there, Kristen, the president refuses to answer what he said and did on the call, which was ask the president to do something about the Bidens here, and then he refuses to answer the question. He clearly realizes if he answers the question, he's admitting to what he's being accused of.
That's right, because he has tried to cast this call as exculpatory, and even White House officials acknowledge that it is not. And so there you see the president under pressure, not wanting to directly answer Jeff Mason's question. It was extraordinary, and it laid bare the fact that this is a president who seems to at least be signaling that he feels backed into a corner. And Chuck, just to make one more point about this, look, I know that some of his top officials have been trying to work out a broader communication strategy to deal with this. And there's sort of this internal debate right now. Is their strategy to say nothing to see here? This is essentially what we've been dealing with since Mueller, or do they need a broader all hands on deck approach? I've been talking to outside allies of the president who say they are missing the mark by not having that. They are concerned because essentially it's up to President Trump, and he's been lashing out on Twitter and now during this press conference, Chuck.
All right, Kristen, that's the update from the White House. Let's go down to Capitol Hill today, Jeff, and I'm going to have Jamie Raskin on in a minute, but this mysterious IG State Department business appears to be weird, bizarre, and nobody quite knows what to make of it. But let's talk about the developments in general today. We heard from Pelosi and Schiff. We have the news that the whistleblower went to the Intel Committee. What can you tell us about this?
Well, let's start with that, Chuck, because one of the reasons why President Trump suggested falsely that House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff might have had, because when he got the question, the reporter who asked him that question mischaracterized the reporting by the New York Times, in large part because the story broke right as those reporters were going into the East Room for the press conference, I'd imagine. But the reporting makes clear that the whistleblower tried to elevate his or her complaint within the agency that he or she works for. The New York Times names the agency. I'm not going to name that agency out of respect for the whistleblower's privacy. There was a concern that that agency wouldn't handle it correctly. And so the whistleblower then approached the House intelligence community to find out how to elevate that complaint within the jurisdiction of the intel community. Both the reporting and Adam Schiff's spokesperson make clear that at no time did Adam Schiff have advance notice about the substance of the complaint. He had no idea what it was about until the night before the hearing with the acting director of national intelligence, which Schiff and his spokesperson point out was actually 3 weeks late, given the deadline by which that whistleblower complaint should have been conveyed to Congress. This whole story, though, has given Republicans a talking point, a fresh talking point to suggest that the whistleblower complaint was something of a political hack job, even though the acting director of national intelligence himself has said on the record definitively that the whistleblower complaint is credible and in alignment with the summary of the phone call that the White House itself put out, detailing the interaction between President Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart.
Well, in some ways, it's a standard practice. Attack the accuser. Right? The accuser's a whistleblower. Attack the accuser. Rather, if the substance is not a comfortable debate, you go down this road. It is a familiar political tactic and one that folks should just be aware of. There's no doubt that Adam Schiff has invited some of this on himself with some decisions he's made. But on this one, this feels like something else there. Jeff Bennett, Kristen Welker, wild ride. Keep riding it. We'll be back to check in. Thank you both. All right. Lots to dig into here. Joining me now, Kimberly, Atkins, senior correspondent for WBUR and an MSNBC contributor. Lonnie Chen, former advisor to Mitt Romney and a research fellow at the Hoover Institute. And Howard Fineman, an MSNBC political analyst, longtime reporter, colleague, and friend of mine. Let me start with what we're seeing with the president. And this, in some ways, it's sort of the president on steroids.
It is. I mean, we've seen all of this before. And so far, let's just be clear, up until now, through the Mueller report, through every other controversy, the president more or less has escaped from it. He has gotten out of it. He saw the Mueller report, the result of that, as a victory. This is something different.
Yeah.
He has. This is something different. But so far, the strategy has worked for him, is my point. Yeah. And he thinks he is able to talk himself out of, outsmart everyone, obfuscate to the point of getting out of a predicament. The problem here, as we saw with him sort of being very careful with the way that he answered that question, is that there are very clear consequences to him saying or doing something wrong here. Every step that he takes, every statement that he makes that contradicts or admits something could end up as an article of impeachment. And so we're seeing him do this dance, but we are seeing all the other levers that he can pull being pulled again in the same way, as you said, on steroids.
You know, what's interesting, Lonnie, is that the one difference between this issue and the Mueller investigation, the Mueller investigation was about people around the president. This has been about him. And I think this is the question I have for you is, can this work the same way? So, for instance, the president is trying to essentially rewrite what was said on the phone call. Listen to this answer. SOT number 3, guys. Listen to the answer he gives about the sort of the detailed noted transcript, which of course isn't a transcript, but the president now claims it is. Where do you hear how he's describing this now? Take a listen.
They didn't know that I had a transcript done by very, very talented people, word for word, comma for comma, done by people that do it for a living. We had an exact transcript. And when we produced that transcript, they died. The only ones that don't like my conversation are the ones that never read it. There are those that think I'm a very stable genius, okay? I watch my words very, very closely.
The president might as well have said the Milwaukee Brewers won last night. I mean, that is what he is claiming, that the Brewers won. That's the equivalent of what he's saying. The Brewers did not win. The Washington Nationals won. Right on. But that is what he's like. First of all, it's not an exact transcript, which we know. But everything in it actually only made things more problematic for him.
The president is speaking to his supporters.
Have they not read this?
Whether they've read it or not, the president is speaking to his supporters. And the president is trying to make a point about the entire process and about how the whole thing, his characterization of it as a hoax is really about characterizing it for people in a way, if they support him, to have ammunition, right? This is really what this is all about. The other difference from Mueller to here, by the way, also,
this is a direct lie,
is that it's
right. This is like, you see what you see in front of your face is not what it is. It's instead something else.
But the other difference, I would say, with Mueller is that this is activity in government.
Yes.
And that's a big difference, right? And there is a much more of a paper trail to the president. To his point, many people were listening in on that call because that's how these things work.
Yes.
And that, in some ways, is more dangerous for the president, precisely because there's more of a paper trail. It's different from the campaign. It's different from what happened with the Mueller investigation. And that's why I think he's going to have to tread much more carefully here.
He's a cornered animal, but he's a very effective, vicious one if he needs to be.
Well, you used the phrase cornered, and right. And the cornered animal is a dangerous animal. And the only thing more dangerous than a dictatorial leader who's confident of his position is a would-be dictatorial leader who isn't. Donald Trump, in that press conference today, went as far as I've ever seen him go down the road toward I am king thinking. This is what you must see. Don't pay attention to the evidence before your eyes. This is what you must see.
Look, he's even ordering Jeff Mason to ask.
This is a question I will answer. This is a question I will not answer. Anybody who disagrees with me is treasonous. I am the state. Now, that is the situation in terms of character of leadership that the impeachment process is designed, ultimately, the founder said, to address. He's saying that the entire process is illegitimate.
It's a coup.
He's basically saying the Constitution is illegitimate. And he's going to, listen, I've spent a lot of time over the years in totalitarian countries. In the old Soviet Union, if somebody became inconvenient as a witness, they disappeared either in reality or from the top of the Lenin mausoleum. That's the thinking we're seeing here, Chuck.
Look, Howard, I normally would say you're being alarmist, but I understand why.
I'm not being alarmist.
I don't think you are either.
It's my duty as somebody who's studied a lot of history, reported on it, to say, in a way, we're not even taking this seriously enough. That thing today will go down in the annals of the dangers to democracy.
And yet I think it is all due to he's flailing.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And look, I think one way that it is like the Mueller report, we're talking about how it's different, is that even though the Mueller report was about the people around him, he personalized it. Yeah. He sees it all as an attack on him. He sees everything, his role, his government, as he said, when I took over the United States of America, when he said that before, that was a Freudian slip.
No, he does think of it as some sort of corporate takeover.
He sees himself as that authoritative leader. That's why he's tweeting about impeachment proceeding being a coup. He sees this all as himself, and that's why he...
By the way, we didn't bring up the other thing he did today. So, with the coup, he's also promising litigation all over the place for the Mueller report. Guys, it's SOT 4. This one came, and again, this is, we're showing it because I think it's more about where is his headspace. Take a listen.
And just so you know, we've been investigating on a personal basis through Rudy and others, lawyers, corruption in the 2016 election. We've been investigating corruption because I was going to definitely, but I probably will be bringing a lot of litigation against a lot of people having to do with the corrupt investigation, having to do with the 2016 election.
For example.
And I have every right to do that because the way they've treated me and other people, they've destroyed people. They've destroyed their lives with a phony charge that never existed, and that was collusion, never existed.
Lonnie, I don't know where the outrage is in the national security community, particularly on the Republican side of the aisle, because every time he does this, Vladimir Putin scores another ability to essentially keep his territorial influence.
Well, I would say, a lot of the national security establishment is with the president now. Those that aren't explicitly made the decision not to be.
Yeah,
they got out.
Right.
And so,
right.
It's... here's what I would say. I think there's a lot of people who are trying to influence the president from a policy perspective, and they're realizing this is a very challenging exercise in a lot of ways because the president's going to do, as we'll talk about later, what he wants to do, whether it's on immigration or guns or any other issue for that matter. So to expect, I keep hearing this refrain, which is when will Republicans ... The answer is the Republican Party of today is not the same Republican Party that we saw.
Okay, but let me throw something at it. What do we make of what Kevin McLean did today? Because that to me was an interesting moment. And I wonder and I connected to, meaning here's somebody who feels, hey, you know what, I got nothing to lose, and I think I want to get off the Trump train.
Okay, he's a career guy.
Right.
And that is a crucial distinction here. In any authoritarian regime, everything relies around political loyalty to the man at the top. You have in Washington, you can call it a deep state, you can call it the government, full of career people, inspectors general, career people like McLean.
Or the ambassador that got thrown out, career foreign service. Yeah.
All the people, many of the people who left the State Department and elsewhere rather than deal with the gang mentality that leads to the Oval Office. We're not supposed to work that way as a country. We're supposed to have elections, but when we have elections, there is a government that has a memory, that has rules, that has standards that are not matters of pure political loyalty. Everything with Donald Trump, all of which he learned from watching the Godfather movies and growing up in Queens as his father's son.
Don't forget Roy Cohn.
And Roy Cohn, et cetera. It's all personal, blind loyalty. A guy like McLean, who went a long way to trying to satisfy Donald Trump, finally said, you know what, I feel bad about some of what I did. That's not me.
Right.
And there are still people all around Washington.
I guess my point is this,
Chuck,
yeah.
This is a race between Donald Trump's attempt to gain control of the entire bureaucracy and what's left of people like McLean.
I guess I look at it this way. Does the president need to start worrying that, you know what, there are people like Kevin McLean, they're done with him. And so going to be more of this. More people willing to go to whistleblowers.
I don't see any sign of that. I don't see any sign of that so long as he thinks that his base is with him, so long as he sees poll numbers that the vast majority of Republicans think he's doing a good job, and so long as he has people on the Hill who's going to back him up.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there will be people who will execute on his agenda in the administration otherwise, and you're right. As long as his numbers remain as they do amongst Republican voters, he's going to have backup on the Hill, and a lot of it.
Please don't use the word execute on his agenda lightly.
Kimberly, Lonnie, and Howard, stick around. Up ahead, Congressman Jamie Raskin joins me following that closed-door briefing with the State Department Inspector General. What the heck is this thing? And later, the Putin punchline. The Russian president is yucking it up over whether he'd interfere in the U.S. election again.
Welcome to Fowler, Indiana,